Novo Nordisk's blockbuster diabetes drug Ozempic can be manufactured for under $5 for a month's supply compared to near $1,000 out-of-pocket list price in the U.S. Referencing the findings in a tweet yesterday, Senator Bernie Sanders wrote, quote, "There is no rational reason other than greed for Novo Nordisk to charge Americans nearly $1,000 a month for Ozempic." The senator telling Bloomberg today that he wants to meet with Novo's CEO to discuss lowering prices as early as next week. Joining us now is one of the authors of the study, Melissa Barber, postdoctoral fellow at Yale University. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Is the senator's conclusion, is that the conclusion that you wanted people to walk away with when they read the study?
I don't know that I came in with a normative intention, right? I'm a health economist. I'm trying to put information into the public sphere that comes with evidence and is transparent in my process and allows people to then make decisions from that. So I'm not sure I'll have a strong opinion on what I wanted the study to do, if that makes sense.
Right, I understand. In terms of how you came up with that $5 a month figure, I just want to understand that more and help our viewers understand that more. You factor in a lot of different things like the active ingredient cost per unit, cost to formulate, and other expenses, the profit. You do include a profit margin for the company. When you calculate active ingredient cost, how do you come up with that number in terms of how you manufacture semaglutide, and what sort of molecule are you basing that number on?
Sure. So where possible, I rely on real-world costs rather than modeling. So in order to understand how much it costs semaglutide to manufacture, I use real-world trade data. So every day, when medicines are made, they're made both as kind of key starting ingredients, active pharmaceutical ingredient, and the finished product. And everyday companies are trading raw materials on global markets. And you can read data on this and you can analyze it. So I look at basically semaglutide transactions between firms for how much they're buying and selling raw ingredients. And then I also interview manufacturers to kind of have a gut check to make sure that it's in line with their experience.
Since semaglutide is a patented molecule, though, how do you get that exact information? Are you using Novo Nordisk's costs for these active ingredients, or are you using other metrics? Because you can produce semaglutide, which could be a sodium-based semaglutide or an acetate-based semaglutide, and I'm wondering if you're using that as a comparison number, which would not be entirely fair.
No, I'm not using that as a comparison number. It's not that I have access to Novo Nordisk's costs. But when companies are buying and selling product across borders, they have to make certain declarations on the value of the product. So I take advantage of that in terms of trade data. This is quite a standard data source. There's quite a lot of publications in the economics literature. NBER works with this sort of data. So this is quite a standard source for these sorts of questions.
In terms of a shortfall of the study, what do you think that might be? What do you think the biggest shortfall could be? Because I would think that there's nothing in, I mean, you mentioned a profit margin, but there's not sort of a recouping of the cost of research and development that Novo Nordisk has done over the years in order to actually come up with semaglutide.
Sure. That's a really important point. I guess it's a question of, is it a limitation of the study, or what was my research question? So I'm not trying to say, what does it cost Novo Nordisk today to manufacture the drug? I'm saying using quite reasonable assumptions based on the trade literature and cost inputs from manufacturers, what is kind of a reasonable range with which we might expect Novo Nordisk, or importantly, another company that might license the intellectual property from Novo Nordisk to be able to manufacture it themselves, what would those costs be? So in terms of limitations around, I'm not accounting for innovation, yes, that's true. And I hope that someone comes out with a study estimating the cost of developing semaglutide by Novo Nordisk, but that's not what the study was about. These are kind of two separate questions.
Okay. In terms of the $5 versus $1,000, and this is specifically, we should point out once again, for the diabetes drug Ozempic, do you think that gap should be closed?
I think that people should be able to afford their medicine that need it. So, yeah. I mean, there is a fair price somewhere between the price that it costs to manufacture a drug and a price that captures these kinds of innovation questions that you're asking, right? And there are other models, right? Right now we have a model where high prices are supposed to pay for innovation, but there are other models, right? We have prize funds for antibiotics. There's all sorts of nascent policy experimentation for how we might pay for innovation in different ways. But given the model we have, we also have to think about cost in different places, right? So this study I conducted with Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, and they carry out operations in a lot of low-income countries and humanitarian contexts. So the question is, should MSF's humanitarian operations, are they the right body to be paying for, a huge profit margin to recoup the cost of innovation? No, like people, the right price is a price that people can afford.
All right. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Fascinating study. Melissa Barber of Yale University.